The narrative begins during the period of the Second World War. A young fellow by the name of Desmond also enlisted in the armed forces. Like everyone else, he joined to serve his country, and upon his arrival at the training camp, he hadn't anticipated that the journey ahead would be so challenging. Just then, their drill sergeant made an entrance with a loud bang. He was speaking so loudly that the person standing nearby could almost go deaf. A soldier named Smitty, who had been fiddling with a knife earlier. Due to the sudden entry, he was so startled that his knife cut into his leg, and one soldier didn't even have time to put on clothes. Sergeant Howell was exactly the kind of soldier depicted in movies, loudly yelling and commenting on people's appearances. Desmond found his peculiar manner quite amusing. However, the soldier who didn't manage to dress on time was punished and had to do the first training without clothes. At the start of the training, they were taught different ways to tie knots so that they could quickly and efficiently tie ropes. They were instructed in various methods to tie knots so they could swiftly and effectively secure ropes. This was extremely necessary, but Desmond was experiencing significant difficulty with it. Nevertheless, having been raised in the mountainous regions, he excelled in running and leaping over obstacles, effortlessly surpassing everyone else. Everything was proceeding smoothly for him until the genuine challenge commenced when it came to handling firearms, and Desmond refused to even touch a gun due to his steadfast principles. Upon hearing this, Sergeant Howell, Desmond was escorted to Captain Glover's office. Desmond explained to the captain that he had been informed he wouldn't be required to handle firearms, and also mentioned that he couldn't work on Saturdays as he dedicates that day to God. Captain Glover found this quite amusing and realized there was no point in taking Desmond into battle if he wasn't willing to adhere to their fundamental rules. Consequently, Desmond was sent for a psychological evaluation because the captain didn't consider him suitable for service. Meanwhile, Howell was belittling all the soldiers. He was consistently belittling everyone while hurling insults at them. He informed everyone about Desmond's refusal to engage in combat. This individual wants to participate in the battle but is unwilling to fight. Quite astonishing. He advised everyone not to depend on this man for anything during the war. That same night, before the lights went out, Desmond was looking at his fiance's picture in his Bible when Smitty snatched it away from him. However, Desmond didn't get angry. He calmly said, "Come on, give it back, man." The next day, Desmond went for a mental evaluation. He explained that he was perfectly healthy, had no illness, and was just a bit different as he believed in God. He wasn't crazy. The doctor understood that Desmond was completely fine and couldn't be dismissed by labeling him as insane. If he desires to serve as a medic during the war, he can be permitted, but he will need to successfully complete the necessary training for that role. However, at this point, Captain Global's pride was on the line. He was resolute in his decision to eliminate him. When he found himself unable to discharge him within the confines of the regulations, he directed Howell to escalate the unit's training regimen. From that day forward, Desmond was tasked with the most challenging and grueling assignments. He was even assigned the responsibility of cleaning the latrines. To further aggravate his predicament, Howell routinely overturned his bed and revoked the forthcoming leave for all the soldiers. He provided Desmond with an explanation for this action. Everyone was very angry with Desmond, and that night, some people got together and beat him up while he was sleeping. Smriti, who was watching all this from a distance, was puzzled as to why this man wanted to stay. He's not getting any respect for fighting, people are hurling abuses at him. Why isn't he going home? The next morning, Howell saw that Desmond's entire body was covered in wounds, and feeling pity, he said to him, "Son, why don't you just leave? Go away from here." But Desmond flatly refused, saying, "No matter what happens, I will go to war to save the country." Moreover, Desmond did not reveal the names of the soldiers who had beaten him. Instead, he said, "I just fell. That's why I have these marks." As soon as their training was over, all the soldiers were granted leave, except for Desmond, who was ordered, "You were arrested because of leaving." Meanwhile, at home, his fiancée Dorothy was waiting for him on their wedding day. When he didn't show up, Dorothy somehow understood that something must have happened, as Desmond would not leave her just like that. Desmond was emotionally shattered while confined in jail. During this period, Glover visited him. He proposed that if Desmond acknowledged his mistake, he would be released without any further action. However, Desmond responded that he could not endorse something he believed to be wrong. Subsequently, Dorothy came to visit him. The issue was simply that he was refusing to handle a firearm, without which he could not fulfill his training requirements. Dorothy inquired why he wouldn't comply, suggesting he should just finish the training and then choose not to use it. But Desmond's decision remained steadfast. And he was not always like that. In fact, during his childhood, he was extremely angry, and to illustrate how he transformed so significantly, the story rewinds to an earlier time. Now we observe a young Desmond. He also had a brother named Hal. His mother was a deeply religious woman, and his father Tom was a retired military soldier. One afternoon, Desmond and Hal were engaged in an argument. As the confrontation intensified, Desmond, in a moment of intense anger, hurled a brick at his brother's forehead, which almost resulted in Hal's death. Hal survived the incident, but this event had a significant impact on Desmond's life. Desmond came to the realization that in his intense anger, he had done something terribly wrong, and if his brother had died, what would he have done? When his mother explained the gravity of the situation to him, he felt even more regretful. From that day to the present, the once angry boy has transformed into a remarkably calm individual. He was engaged in some activities at the church today. As soon as Desmond observed that an individual had encountered an accident, he hurried outside without any hesitation. To halt the man's bleeding, Desmond utilized his belt and swiftly transported the injured individual to the hospital. The doctor commended Desmond for employing his presence of mind, which effectively saved a life today. Observing the doctors and nurses diligently at work, a long-held desire within Desmond was awakened. He had always aspired to become a doctor and assist people. He had always desired to, but never had the opportunity to pursue studies for it. On that particular day, Desmond encountered a nurse named Dorothy. He fell deeply in love with her at first sight. He was merely seeking an excuse to engage in conversation with her. Upon discovering that donating blood might provide an opportunity for a conversation, he was instantly prepared, stating they could take as much blood as they wished. The following day, Desmond returned to the hospital. While conversing with Dorothy, he eventually asked her out. Dorothy also perceived him to be a kind-hearted individual. Thus, she consented as well. Their initial date proceeded rather smoothly. Even though Desmond, who had been brought up alongside his sibling, was still in the process of learning how to converse with women, Dorothy was somewhat taken aback when Desmond unexpectedly kissed her on their way back. She expressed that it was inappropriate, she was not fond of it, and he ought to have requested permission. Nevertheless, despite this uncomfortable incident, their relationship commenced to flourish. Dorothy began providing her medical textbooks to Desmond, which enabled him to embark on learning about the field of medicine. He started to learn. A few days later, Hal told the family at home that he had enlisted in the army and signed up to go to war. He thought it was right to inform the family only after the decision was final, because telling them earlier could have led to objections. His mother despised the word war because she believed that taking anyone's life was a crime against God. Seeing Hal in military uniform brought back painful memories for Tom, as he had also fought battles in his time, and all those cherished companions who matured alongside him were tragically killed in that devastating war, which consumed them entirely, leaving Hal despondent and turning to alcohol. Displeased with his son's choice, Tom expelled him from the room. Subsequently, Desmond confided in his mother, "Mom, I intend to enlist in the army as well, but not to take lives, rather to save them. As a physician, you understand." The following day, he also conveyed this to Dorothy. She wasn't fond of the notion of Desmond endangering his life without necessity, but he expressed that the nation requires our service, and if we do not engage in the battle, then who will? However, prior to departing, I wish to marry you. Upon hearing this, Dorothy was momentarily taken aback, but she soon consented. The date for the wedding was arranged, yet before departing for the war, Desmond visited his father, who was standing solemnly by the graves of those companions he lost in the war. With bitterness in his voice, Tom remarked that they were all fools. They spoke of dying and killing and about the country. In truth, Tom was hesitant about the thought of burying any of his dear sons, especially since he doubted Desmond would survive the battle. This was because after almost harming his brother, Desmond vowed never to take another life. He promised not to attack anyone, and in his view, that wasn't how wars are won. The day had finally arrived for Desmond to depart for his training. Dorothy presented him with a Bible that contained a picture of her inside. It was a meaningful symbol of their love and mutual trust. We have already witnessed what transpired during the training period. Now Desmond found himself in jail, and Dorothy was at a loss as to how to secure his release. When Dorothy couldn't conceive of any solution, she reached out to Desmond's parents. The following day, seeking assistance, Desmond's father appeared at Fort Jackson, dressed in his old uniform adorned with all his medals. Whether they ought to have consulted their former commanding officer, who had since been promoted to the rank of brigadier, Desmond's court-martial commenced at that location, and Desmond remained resolute in his declaration of innocence. Just as the moment of sentencing approached, Tom appeared, bearing a letter from the brigadier. This letter served as a reminder to all present that, in accordance with the nation's constitution, if an individual holds a belief in something, they possess the inherent right to decline actions or things that contradict their convictions. Every person is entitled to this right provided that the situation does not escalate further. The case was promptly dismissed at that juncture, and the accusations against Desmond were subsequently dropped. Now he was thoroughly prepared to enter the battlefield as a medic without bearing any weapons. In this joyous occasion, Desmond and Dorothy finally united in marriage and shared their first night together. In the year 1945, Desmond, the military troop, was strategically deployed on the Okinawa island of Japan. At this point, they were on the brink of jumping directly into the intense battlefield. Upon their arrival, they were immediately confronted with horrifying and gruesome sights. Bodies were being removed and discarded like garbage. It quickly became evident that they were there to replace the soldiers who had tragically already perished. The remaining soldiers from the previous division were subsequently merged with the global unit. And at that location, Desmond encountered two additional medics. They became acquainted with Hacksaw and Richardson. The United States military had attempted to seize Hacksaw and Richardson on 6 separate occasions, but each attempt was thwarted by the Japanese forces. The adversary intentionally focused on medics to prevent any assistance from reaching the wounded soldiers. Consequently, Desmond had to eliminate the medic insignia to avoid attracting undue attention. He was also provided with a helmet for his safety. Within just a few days, Tax and Edge have arrived. It was very important to capture this place. Once captured, Silent would be completely under control.
The American military forces swiftly commenced their ascent. Intense bombardment was being executed on the adversary to weaken the Japanese defensive fronts, and smoke dispersed across the entire battlefield. Seizing this opportunity, their unit initiated the climb towards the peak, fully equipped and prepared for combat, yet little did they anticipate that this war was destined to be exceedingly dreadful. As they persisted in their advance, the Japanese forces also initiated intense bombardment. One by one, soldiers began to fall, but he continued assisting as many soldiers as he was able to rescue, even those comrades who had been left behind previously. On multiple occasions, Japanese soldiers approached perilously close to ending Desmond's life, but Smitty intervened to save him whenever the opportunity arose. Smitty persistently engaged in combat and rescued Desmond on several occasions. Following an extended and perilous confrontation, night descended and the American forces resolved to maintain their position at the front. They established a camp in that location to ensure they could seize the entire summit by dawn. Howell communicated to everyone that it was exceedingly perilous to venture anywhere unaccompanied, so they should remain in their individual foxholes and refrain from wandering outside. Nevertheless, Desmond was entirely dedicated to rescuing the injured soldiers. He was determined to make certain that anyone who could be saved would not perish in vain. Without considering his own safety, he embarked on a mission to rescue those who were still alive. Desmond successfully rescued the lives of several wounded soldiers and transported them back to safety. Subsequently, he and Smitty took a moment to rest within a trench. Smitty's demeanor towards Desmond underwent a complete transformation. Desmond's unwavering commitment to saving the lives of others without any regard for his own safety garnered immense respect from Smitty. They exchanged a few laughs and their relationship improved considerably. As Desmond drifted into sleep, he began experiencing frightening nightmares of the war. He envisioned that the enemy entered their trench and killed both of them. He was extremely scared and told his dream to Smitey, but Smitey was astonished to hear that even in the dream, you didn't pick up a weapon. When they were about to kill the enemies, "You're an amazing man, brother. There wasn't much else to do." So Desmond told him his story. For years, his father, drunk, would beat his mother, and Desmond unwillingly witnessed it all. One day, when it went too far, Desmond confronted Tom. "I took Tom's firearm and aimed it at him. However, I didn't experience any sense of empowerment from that action. Instead, my father collapsed and dropped to his knees, weeping intensely. His state was also a consequence of the war. He lost numerous comrades due to this weapon. From that moment forward, I pledged never to wield a weapon again." Smithy additionally shared his personal story. He never once saw his father, and his mother abandoned him at an orphanage when he was just a child. As the morning dawned, the Japanese military forces initiated a counterattack. The American soldiers were still in a light slumber. Due to the intense bombardment, Howell commanded a retreat. Their navy attempted to shield them, but the Japanese forces were executing extremely perilous bombings. Amidst all this chaos, Smithy was severely injured, yet Desmond remained unafraid. He carefully picked up his companion and transported him to a secure location. There was no alternative available, so the American military forces executed a complete withdrawal from that position and descended from the elevated terrain. Desmond had the opportunity to leave as well, but he chose not to. He could distinctly hear the cries of the men who were left behind. He made the decision that he had to rescue every one of them. Captain Global was orchestrating the retreat. He assembled the remaining soldiers and initiated their departure. They left a few soldiers stationed to observe the area. Without any regard for his own safety, Desmond was valiantly struggling amidst the overwhelming devastation. He was diligently rescuing injured soldiers one by one. Utilizing a sturdy rope, he carefully tied them up and gently lowered them down individually. As soon as Glover comprehended what Desmond was undertaking, he commanded artillery fire to ensure Desmond's safety. However, this decisive action brought Desmond, Glover, and the remaining soldiers into the enemy's full view, and they were now completely visible. At any given moment, it could have happened, but still, Desmond did not give up. Vehicles arrived to take the wounded soldiers. Desmond was lowering them down, and he didn't stop even when the Japanese soldiers got close. Suddenly, Desmond found an injured soldier. Using his wits, Desmond covered him with dirt so the enemies wouldn't see him and placed a corpse over himself. This tactic worked, and the Japanese soldiers left without noticing them. As soon as they left, Desmond rescued the hidden wounded soldier. He carefully lowered him down the hill, utilizing a sturdy rope. Meanwhile, a desperate Glover was pleading with his superior for assistance. However, due to the ongoing war, they were reluctant to send help. As the battle continued, Desmond took a perilous step. He began to descend from the peak, but this time the enemy noticed him. Amidst intense gunfire, Desmond leaped into a Japanese tunnel. There, he discovered an injured Japanese soldier. This tunnel was discreetly used by Japanese soldiers. They utilized it for their coming and going. A few soldiers were passing through at that particular moment, so Desmond swiftly concealed himself. He wasn't discovered, but suddenly he encountered a severely injured soldier. However, Desmond didn't perceive him as an adversary. To him, he was merely a man in agony. He administered morphine and carefully bandaged his injuries. By the time Desmond emerged from the tunnel, it was quite late at night. However, even the overwhelming darkness could not deter him. He continued to rescue soldiers one by one. His hands were scraped and raw from persistently gripping the rope to lower people down. Blood was now seeping from them, yet he did not cease his efforts. Alongside his comrades, he carefully lowered numerous Japanese soldiers as well. Once it became evident, Global observed that a significant number of injured soldiers had been saved from the battlefield and brought down. A wounded soldier mentioned that they were expressing that he accomplished all of this by himself. At that moment, Desmond discovered Howell along with another soldier. Both were wounded, yet still alive. Howell instructed Desmond to return for him later and prioritize saving the other soldier first. Desmond lifted the other soldier and transported him to a secure location. Shortly thereafter, he returned for his sergeant, but a Japanese soldier noticed Desmond and fired at him. Fortunately, the bullet struck his helmet, allowing Desmond to survive. There were still numerous bullets present. At this point, Desmond intentionally ran out into the open area to determine the sniper's exact location, and as soon as Howell identified his position, Howell took a highly precise shot and eliminated him. As soon as he got the opportunity, Desmond swiftly dragged Howell back towards their camp, but then the enemy noticed them and the shooting commenced. He continued to fire while Desmond gradually dragged him away. As soon as they leaped down the rope to descend from the summit, Japanese soldiers began shooting at them from above. Nevertheless, the American soldiers stationed on the ground took control and shot them down. At this point, Desmond had successfully brought all the survivors down from above. Upon reaching the ground, Desmond observed the respect in everyone's eyes and hearts for him. He had been doing all of this for an indeterminate amount of time. He was exceedingly weak. He was transported to the medical facility where it was revealed that the other medic had not survived. Following all of this, Glover approached Desmond and remarked, "Brother, you are truly remarkable. Please forgive me for the poor behavior I exhibited towards you." He stated that no one else could accomplish what Desmond had done for his nation. Clower also noted that they would ascend to the ridge the following day, but since the next day is Saturday, which is your designated day of prayer, if you choose not to go up tomorrow, it is perfectly fine. However, Desmond responded, "I will go." Before this, the whole unit waited for him to finish praying, deciding they wouldn't go up without Desmond no matter what. This time, the Americans launched a surprise attack on the Japanese soldiers, for which they were not prepared. Additionally, the Americans had received reinforcements from behind and they had found the tunnel that Desmond had indicated. This made it quite easy to defeat the enemy. In between, some Japanese soldiers set a trap. They started advancing while waving a white flag as if they were surrendering, but it was a trick. When they got very close, they began throwing grenades. To protect his people, Desmond threw the grenade away, but it exploded beforehand, injuring Desmond. The soldiers lifted him onto a stretcher and tried to get him out of there. As they were leaving, Desmond's Bible fell, which was picked up after stopping. The American forces finally won and Hacksaw Ridge was fully captured. This is a true story of Desmond Doss, who saved the lives of 75 wounded soldiers on Hacksaw Ridge all by himself. Desmond was perhaps the only man in the world to do so. Without picking up any weapon, he turned the tide of the war. Without him, those 75 soldiers wouldn't have survived. For his bravery, he was awarded the Medal of Honor, which is the highest award given in the US during wartime. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.